Hello and welcome to our weekly blockchain gaming roundup. Today is Friday, the 22nd of November. I am Jenny Jordan and with me is co-host John Jordan. Hi John, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Not been a super exciting week, I wouldn't say, in terms of news. Bitcoin is obviously up. That's very exciting for sort of the general crypto crowd. But in terms of gaming, we still haven't seen sort of a big it's not like it's following the trend strongly in terms of crypto. And then obviously it's been the YDG game summit. Is that what we call it? What's it called? YDG.
Yeah. Everyone's a lot of people
in
there.
The Philippines. Say it again.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to be there, don't they? All the usual suspects, but some of the people you wouldn't necessarily expect to be there are sort of all there as well. So
no, it seems like out of all the events that have sort of been throughout the year, that's the busiest one. So well done to YGG. The biggest kind of news coming out of that is regarding YGG's own launch of Onchain Guilds, which is coming on base, but we'll talk more about that later. First off, Limit Break announced this week that they have made their NFT creator first protocols completely permissionless for any creator on any EVM compatible chain. What does that mean, John? More technically, sort of simplified, I would say. It's quite technical, but if you can just sort of simplify.
Yeah, well, you have to sort of be a bit careful. This is very technical Solidity coding. So I'm not, obviously not a Solidity coder. And they put out a very detailed Medium post about exactly what they had released. I mean, this is part of the ongoing sort of way in which Limit Break is trying to sort of rebuild some of the sort of fundamental building blocks around blockchain as it sort of relates to gaming and sort of wider too. So Limit Break is the company that Gabe Leiden set up, raised $200 million in August 2022, sort of the last big funding round. Gabe is well known in the mobile game space for running co-founding Machine Zone, which is one of the really big mobile game publishers in the sort of mid 2010s. So sort of 2015 was its sort of high point. But he's a very interesting sort of chap, and he came into Web3, supposedly working on a game. We've not heard very much, or heard very little about that, but I think he came to the space, and with his experience of running big sort of games and big sort of data platforms, just sort of realised there were some fundamental bits that were not working, and if no one fixed them, then this sort of this sort of dream people have of having very successful blockchain games was not going to work. And sort of the first thing they addressed was what we saw with sort of the collapse of NFTs, where the marketplace Blur came along and didn't enforce royalties, which meant people buying and selling NFTs, none of that went back to the original NFT creator because there was no way of enforcing that on chain. So they've sort of fixed. That's the first thing they did. They sort of fixed that, and then they've gone on to build sort of additional elements, and some of it I think may end up being controversial, because obviously to do what they've done is they've had to sort of make the thing less decentralized, because to enforce royalties you have to sort of enforce sort of whitelist and blacklist, and you have to enforce effectively that marketplaces are going to use your smart contracts that will enforce royalties. And they've gone sort of a step beyond that, and also allowing people to enforce minimum prices for NFTs and maximum prices for NFTs. And obviously there may be good reasons to use that from a business point of view. But that sort of goes against maybe some of the tenets of sort of blockchain. And then again, it's a whole bunch more complicated, a whole bunch of other sort of things that they're doing in terms of sort of gas and blah, 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 blah. So, we won't go into all that. But as you say, the news today is two different components have now been made permissionless on any EVM chain. So basically anyone can use them. And I guess one of the big elements of that is that we've started to see they have a standard called ERC 721C. That's what Limit Break have come up with. And that's been pretty much adopted by people like OpenSea, and so we started to see now whenever the next big NFT boom happens, I think most of the projects will be using enforced royalties, which means they can sort of, if traders are making money trading these NFTs, then the people who made the NFTs can also make their whatever 5% or whatever it is, and that allows more sustainability. So the next thing Limit Break's going to do, having dealt with NFTs, is going to deal with tokens. Now, I guess you can't do exactly the same thing with tokens, I guess, or it's much harder to do to enforce upper and lower limits of token prices. But they're basically going to, some of the tech they're doing, and again, it may be for some games may want to enforce sort of a lack of volatility. You may actually sort of want to create a sort of a stable coin or something. So then, again, we have to sort of see a little bit how projects will end up using these tools. So I guess the tools have a very wide use case, and it's up to different projects to decide how they sort of put those things together for their own particular sort of audience. But it's sort of interesting, and I guess I think the things he's doing are very important and are sort of underestimated because they're very techy, and people, even I'm not saying even me, but people like me who are sort of fairly understand the sort of concepts, you sort of zone out very quickly when it starts getting too technical. So it's hard to understand the significance. But I guess the interesting thing is, once they've put all these building blocks in place, what will they do with their game? And they're toning down the game. They sort of said, we've got a very small team working on it, and blah, blah. I don't really expect very much to be happening. I mean, hopefully something formally announced in 2025, but say they launched their NFTs in 2022, so they're already 2.5 years into them messing around with this sort of stuff. And there obviously is some possibility that they just ditch that game and that NFT collection and never seen of again, and they sort of work more at this sort of fundamental level. I mean, they've got enough money to be working for a decade without actually releasing anything, so they're not in any hurry. And Gabe is a very idiosyncratic sort of person. So he's not someone I would rely on. So he's not desperate to get a game out and sort of do it for the sake of it, sort of thing. But definitely interesting for the industry.
I guess it's interesting for me anyway. The most interesting part is almost the ideological thing there, the kind of clash of wanting to bring kind of some sort of structure into a fairly kind of, what you say, almost anarchy kind of market otherwise, without any regulations. And it's not bringing in regulations, but it's trying to build sort of technical frameworks that people can use instead of regulations. And how is the industry sort of gonna react to that? Yeah, that'll certainly be interesting.
And I think just to briefly go on that. I mean, I do think it from just putting a game development hat on, I can imagine something where you would maybe, you would want some level of speculation. So you wouldn't probably say all your assets in the game are going to be capped, but you might not want sort of, with Axie, you might not want Axies going from $1 to whatever they were at one point, $300, and then now back down to $2. You may want that on some of your assets, but on your bog standard assets, you may want to go, this can never sell below $2 and never sell above $10. And and obviously some people will be annoyed about that, and people won't get involved. But it just makes. I think you want for blockchain projects, you want some crypto speculative sort of juice in there somewhere, but you don't want that running the entire project. And that's sort of where we've ended up at the moment. So you end up with this massive sort of volatility. And if you didn't have that sort of level of volatility, you wouldn't have that sort of virality around the growth mechanic. But for the people who just want to play the game, you don't really want something that you bought yesterday for $100 to be worth sort of $5, which is sort of particularly on just thinking about basically Solana back in the day was had that on the token, everyone piled in, all these games were launching Solana stuff, and then the floor price of many of those NFTs was still 2 Solana or whatever, but it had gone from $200 down to $10. So and a lot of those projects obviously couldn't sustain that. So you can sort of see where the thinking comes in.
Yeah, and that's been really quite apparent during the last year. I think developers have been more open about kind of we don't actually want pump and dump and those sort of scenarios. They don't benefit us as developers or our games.
No.
We're trying to build a quality game here for real gamers. We don't really want this unpredictability. Anyway, so the Kratos gamer network KGeN has raised 10 million for its Web3 gamer network. Tell us a bit more about that. Its total funding now is 40 million, I believe.
30.
30 million.
Yeah.
What are they doing, and what will
So, yes.
money go there?
So KGeN actually started, effectively they took over what was IndieGG, that was the sort of Indian arm of YGG, who we just spoke about, Yield Good Gaming, who obviously mainly focused in Southeast Asia. India is not part of Southeast Asia. So a sort of, and there's quite a lot of, it's quite sort of a small sort of scene of Indian sort of game developers and sort of game devs scene, but it's quite sort of tightly knit. So actually, I knew the guy who leads KGeN, Manish. I've known him for quite a long time. He was doing mobile games, and he's been CEO of some of the bigger Indian games companies, and he's been interested in Web3 for a while. So he basically, he knows people. They put together like a deal and bought out IndieGG that was, I think, a bit grassroots and not quite, had problems finding its feet, didn't raise the money that YGG had. So it's sort of interesting that whether you see KGeN and YGG as sort of rivals, I mean, in some ways they're not, because they're sort of, KGeN bought IndieGG from YGG. But I think they potentially end up being a little bit rivalrous. And they're obviously different. The KGeN people aren't at the YGG conference sort of things. I think that sort of tells you something. Anyway, so KGeN is sort of building something a bit like YGG in the sense it's sort of a guild becoming a protocol. So they basically onboard people to their platform and get them to playing games, and they can gain rewards, which could be rewards that the game gives out or could be rewards that KGeN gives out. KGeN doesn't have a token yet. The funding round said that it didn't specifically say it's going to have a token, but it basically said the $10 million raised is on a fully diluted value of $500 million. So that you only get fully diluted value of a token. So clearly there's going to be a token at some point. Obviously, you wouldn't launch a token necessarily at the moment, a gaming token. So we'll see when that happens. The funding was interesting. It was mainly from sort of crypto. They called it an ecosystem fund, I think. So mainly from Aptos. So they are running their stuff on the Aptos blockchain. Not much gaming happening on Aptos, so probably quite a big deal for Aptos. Polygon was another funder, and Game 7, the sort of gaming DAO. They also, they're very into sort of tokens and stuff. So those are the funders. And it is sort of interesting that, I think the other thing with KGeN is, even though they're based in India, they're trying very hard not to be just seen as an Indian outfit. So obviously India is pretty strong for them. They have obviously good links there. And I would imagine the majority of their audience is still Indian. But they obviously Web3, so they reach out and they talk about Brazil and Nigeria as being other sort of key markets for them. So we'll sort of see. I guess they're not quite, as we talk about what sort of YGG, I think, are ahead of the game in terms of how it's thinking about, evolving the guild model. I think sort of KGeN is taking a slightly different approach. And maybe being a bit more Web 2-ish, we'll see how it pans out. I think at the moment there's obviously enough audience for many dozens of guilds to all be successful. So it's not like a one model will eat the world sort of thing.
Yeah. Right, and on the note of YGG, they have their YGG Play Summit, as I said, in Philippines, in Manila this week, and the first kind of big news to come out of that was that YGG themselves are launching their Onchain Guilds platform, and they are going to launch that protocol on Base. So can you talk us through a little bit what that is? I hadn't heard of it before. I think the whole kind of, it was basically unveiling what Onchain Guilds is, and then also announcing that they were partnering with Base for that.
Yeah, when I had Gabby Dees on, one of the co-founders, on the podcast a few months ago, and I was asking, you're going to launch a blockchain, and he was very, very certain. Like he said, we don't want to sort of have other people. We don't want to launch something that other people have to fill up the block space on. We want to go and fill up other people's block space. So so they've announced they're going on Base, which that's a sort of technical decision. Who knows? Base is fairly cheap, but it's not the cheapest. If they went on an L3, it would be cheaper. But they're going on Base, which is a Ethereum L2. So again, maybe it limits a little bit of how much stuff they're going to put on chain. But like I said, what they're trying to do is they're trying to move from a guild model that was sort of organising lots of people and setting stuff up for them to do. They have this thing called the what are they called now? They're called a gap. They have gap programs. They've rolling programs, different seasons in YGG, and they plug different games in and all this sort of stuff. That's how they sort of keep their people going. And the idea of the on-chain guilds is to be more of a protocol in the sense that they'll provide a bunch of tools that anyone can set up an on-chain guild using their protocols, and that will give you basically your setup, like who's the members of the guild. You'll sort of track what they do on chain. You can set up a treasury, presumably with a multi-sig wallet, so people can control those assets. You can mint your own NFTs. Do basically all the things that YGG and other guilds have done sort of manually. They sort of automate that in an on-chain sort of process. I guess it's a bit sketchy as an announcement at the moment. It's going live next year, so we'll obviously find out more details when it goes live. I'm not really clear how because YGG have a token, the YGG token, which at the moment is mainly being used as a sort of reward token. So it's not quite clear how that fits into it. Presumably that will go live on the base token and maybe be sort of somehow. You could imagine people needing the YGG token to access the sort of on-chain guild stuff. I don't think it can't be used as a gas token. Famously, Base doesn't have its own token, so Base uses Ethereum. So basically, bridged Ethereum on the Base blockchain is the gas token for the Base blockchain. So we'll sort of see how that all plays out. But it's sort of it does make sort of total sense and puts sort of connects a few things that Gabby was saying in that podcast about how YGG sort of sees themselves. And obviously, for their point of view, they've been running sort of quite a big guild, probably the biggest guild out there, the most successful guild, the first guild, gaming guild. And they running all these sort of programs, and now that sort of open sources that, so any other guild can basically plug into YGG's programs. So that sort of gives them maybe a 10x scaling in the long term. So that sort of makes sense from that point of view. And it's good to see that the Jesse, the founder of Base, was there. I mean, he's quite a big figure now. So sort of obviously their Base for him to go over to the Philippines is sort of a stamp of approval on that as well. So yeah,
it's part of his kind of big tournament, not tournament.
Doing a world tour or something, isn't he?
It's big tour. Yeah, he's been traveling around for quite some time. I think over a month.
And I guess it is again a little bit under the radar. Base is sort of building up, slowly. It is building up a bit of momentum. So we had sort of the Lord's token, and the Lord's the Block Lords Dynasty companion app going live on Base, and we had Animoca's Tower token going live on Base, and there's sort of a few other,
Metacane,
so people are sort of using, people are sort of coming to Base, and Base is sort of building up. Sort of external to gaming has like DeFi protocols out there now. Aerodrome seems to be doing quite well, so they are sort of building up a sort of a bit of a deeper ecosystem than when it was just I think when they sort of started out they were just sort of random NFTs for a cent sort of thing, and a bit sort of didn't have a lot of depth to it, and I think that's sort of changing a little bit.
Parallels building on Base, aren't they, as well? And then I got that B3.
No, but they're not now, are they?
Gaming chain. No, but this isn't quite clear, John. So anyway, another news coming out of the event is that Parallel is making their own L3. I think it is an L3 anyway. Is it their own blockchain essentially? And they have previously announced they're going on Base, and then with their AI game Colony, that was to be deployed on Solana. But he was questioned. So I saw just some shorts about from the founder, and he had said, that's not really clear. Those kind of details will come out later. Yeah. But I assume that they're just gonna base everything on their L3. But I don't know where the L3 is going to be built. Maybe that's on.
Well, it's on B3. I think
it's on B3. And B3
the news is B3 is based on Base. So. But they sort of just announced they were doing the Prime chain, but didn't really. It was very not much. And I guess the so everyone got very excited earlier in the year about the sort of the Colony game. It was going to be the first blockchain game using OpenAI. I mean, it's got a bit quiet on exactly how the game's going to work. But that was announced on Solana, which was a bit of a surprise because everything else on from Parallel had been EVM. So that would be the one you would think, are they going to move it from? And then there's no assets released on it, so that that would be be fairly easy to move it because there's nothing live. So anyway, we'll see.
Okay, good. So we covered it a few weeks back, I think about 2 weeks back, the fact that Planetarium was coming up to its first anniversary since the launch of, well, not the launch of 9 Chronicles, that's been live for a few years, but the 9 Chronicles M, which is, enlarged, is their mobile kind of adoption of the game, but that's not what M stands for. M stands for, what does
multi-chain.
It stand for? It's like cross-chain, multi-chain, because it built its own chain designed for the release of the mobile game and basically forked the old game and so and so. So then we did cover that a few weeks back regarding Planetarium sort of releasing some figures on the growth of users in 9 Chronicles and the use of the token and so on. And now you have been looking into it again, haven't you? Yep. And tell us.
So as you say, 9 Chronicles, the original game was out for donkey's years on PC on its own customized blockchain, which they called Odin. And then 9 Chronicles M came out a year ago, and that was the first release via mobile. So the slightly confusing thing now is you can play the game. The game is now cross-platform. You can play it on PC and mobile. You can play it on just one. But there's some features are only available on PC, the more blockchain ones, and some features are only available on mobile. Notably, some of the battle pass stuff and the in-app purchase stuff. So you can play. So I play the game pretty much every day, and I play sometimes on PC, sometimes on mobile, depending on where I am. And obviously that's sort of cross-platform. But you can't play across chain. So your assets are either on the original Odin chain or they had a new chain called Hemdal, whatever it's called. Anyway, some Norse mythical thing, which is actually an L2 running off of Odin. So, but the important thing is that they for a game that was a PC game, and I think before the mobile version launched, they were doing about 44,000 daily active unique wallets. And now, a year on, they're up to about 90,000. They peaked at over 100,000 for a couple of days. So clearly, it's over. They doubled the audience. I think it's 130% sort of growth or something like that. So from that point of view, clearly, from a just a sort of headline user growth, they've doubled their audience by going onto mobile, which is sort of what you sort of hope. And the other thing though, and obviously sometimes. We get a bit hopeful around more user-based driving sort of token prices. The token price has gone. Actually, the token price did go up for until about April this year. So the token price, I mean, most game tokens were going up in April for sort of systemic reasons rather than particular game reasons. But since April, the price of the token has gone down pretty heavily, and it's actually now at an all-time low. So you sort of have this sort of, in some ways counterintuitive situation where the audience of the game has doubled, more than doubled, and the token, which is actually quite used in the game for buying things and staking and getting other things, has gone down by about 70%. So just a sort of reminder that these two things would go opposite directions. The price of the token is just pretty much speculative. It's even a utility token. You just need like millions of people playing it for their activity to have any impact on the utility. I mean, in other ways, as I said, for somebody who plays the game, it's really great in some ways that the token is going down, because it means there's some things you can stake the token in the game to get extra rewards, and Planetarium obviously is trying to make more of that, to make people buy the token to, theoretically raise the price. So in some ways, the token price going down is sort of good, because it means you can level up quicker if you want to take that route. So, I just think Planetarium is sort of an interesting game because it uses its own blockchain and has some quite deep integration if you really want to get into it. Most people don't. There is sort of a core fan base. Some people have been playing that game for years and years, and have very large sort of their sort of gear. They're very sort of high powered gear. Not necessarily, I was going to say expensive. It's not necessarily expensive because you need someone to buy it off you, obviously, but there are people who spend a lot of time and have a lot of assets in that game, and we'll see where they go with it.
It's kind
I'm
of
still
funny
playing.
though. It's almost the story with the most successful games we're seeing at the moment, sort of Pixels and Pirate Nation. That the tokens are actually not the kind of strong indicator of the game's success in that sense. That both Pixel and Pirate are sort of down significantly. Now, interestingly, Pirate Nation are opening their rewards today for the end of season 2, aren't they?
Yep.
And knowing that about 70% that actually staked back the tokens into the ecosystem following season 1. It'll be interesting to see what the kind of this heavily rewarded staking instead, the sort of system they have in place for season 2. Moving on to season 3 will come out. Next you've written Age of Dino, and I'm not exactly sure about that. So
just very quickly. So Age of Dino is a mobile 4X game, and it is one that actually is, I think, start of this year, or maybe end of last year, did a very successful NFT launch for these sort of standard sort of PFP type stuff. And it's part of the Exterio platform, which, again, we heard a lot about Exterio end of 2023, early 2024. They did their various, was it Overreach? I can't remember what they did. They did like Overworld, that's right.
Overworld,
They did a bit of like a big PFP launch, and it was sort of the last gasp of PFPs, and it was very much geared to get this, and you'll get sort of all these extra sort of rewards, and it was sort of talking about tokens and stuff, because they do have an XTER is their token. It's not live yet. But it was very juiced around that, and everyone was piling in because that was the sort of meta at the time. And then basically just went silent. They did actually launch very briefly. They launched a sort of hyper casual game that was a bit of a failure. So anyway, but Age of Dinos has now sort of come out of. I think it's been live on the app stores for I played it earlier this year, and it's sort of very standard 4X game with sort of mech dinosaurs as the theme. It's quite well done if you like that sort of stuff. The problem with those games is they do get a bit boring and a bit grindy quite quickly. But it's now shooting up the charts, and their sort of CEO, Exterio CEO, is sort of like talking up the fact that they're marketing to Web 2 people, and there's no bots and none of this sort of crypto reward type stuff, even though you look at it, there is a bunch of crypto reward type stuff in there. Looks like they've got a token called Raw that they're sort of going to be giving out. So it doesn't seem to be like a formal play to airdrop campaign, but it seems to be that seems to be what's happening. So I guess just one to watch. If you haven't played it, you just get it from the app stores. I mean, when I played it, I couldn't see any blockchain integration, but it's worth looking at these things. So, the parts of it I sort of enjoyed for a couple of weeks. But in general, so Exterio, as I say, is one that was sort of very much making headlines at the start of the year and then went very quiet. So it's sort of they have a whole bunch of games in their ecosystem. It's not quite clear how their ecosystem works to me. I think they're going to be running their own blockchain. I can't remember what it's based off of, but maybe that's one for 2025 more. But keep an eye on it.
Good. Next up, Immutable Squad RPG Guild of Guardians, which launched in May, has released a new event and 2 new Guardian NFTs. What are they called? Hannah and Dip?
Drig or something?
Yeah. Notably, this is the update following the sort of big expansion they did in October.
Yeah.
So you are playing the game quite a lot, aren't you? So have you got these 2 new ones? If you join the event and you've got these 2 new ones, you are eligible to sort of higher rewards and stuff, aren't you? So have you got them yet?
I bought the legendary one. So as you say, there's 2 different ones. One's a legendary, which is the highest level of NFT in the game. And the Drig, whatever it's called, is Epic, which is lower. So I think Hannah was selling for about $50 on the marketplace, and Drig for about $5, which is roughly sort of pricing of those things for new ones. So Hannah is, I think, a little bit underwhelming. She's like a sort of magical mage. I'm not. Maybe I'll sell her on again later on. I normally when the new Guild of Guardians NFTs come out, I normally buy them just to sort of play around with them and see.
I wish I was a bit more like that. I get so attached to the initial ones I have, and I get my favorites that I find it really difficult to then change them. Like, you work out your strategy and then you want to stick to that sort of thing.
And I like trying out new ones. I mean, the problem is, but when you're playing the game, the maximum guardians you can take into a sort of some of the levels are smaller, but the maximum you can take is 10. So I have at the moment I have 11 legendary guardians. So I sort of have, I have too many. So I sort of try and cycle through them and then work out. I don't really do it to make. I'm not doing it to make money, but if there's something you're just not using, you end up with too many mages or too many of one sort of type. Then I sort of look at the price and try and sell them on. So yeah, as I say, I've cycled through and bought some and sold some. The problem becomes is if some of them end up being too expensive, then you need to, when you're leveling them up, some of the leveling up you need to destroy one of the same characters. So for one of them I bought, and she was actually really good, but she was like $70 to buy. So it's like I've got to spend $70 to buy another one to level it up. Whereas and she's expensive because she's new. Whereas there's probably like a legacy one that I could buy for like $20 and buy, and then it's 40 to level up. So you sort of end up selling the more expensive one. And there's quite a lot of legacy ones that are because the game's been around for such a long time. There's quite a lot that people just new players just don't know about. So I tried to actually look at some of the older sort of characters as well, to see how they're going to fit in. So yeah, I mean, the problem with Guild of Guards, I think, it's a really good game. They've supported it well. There's a good content. It's just the audience, is not. I don't think it's growing. Maybe it's in sort of a managed decline, but at some point they have to think about how to. I mean, I think they can run it like this for another year or so, but at some point, I can't think the game is breaking even. So, from a business point of view, you have to make some decisions.
Mm-mm. Okay, and we've already been talking quite a lot about tokens, but there has been 2 tokens launched this week, and one of them is on base, isn't it? The Champs token. And then Big Time Studios launched their Open Loot token. I think it's gone live on OKX, and then the crypto exchange. Anyway, the Open Loot is sort of the underlying token for the Open Loot marketplace, which includes more games than just Big Time Studios.
Yeah, there's about 5 different games on there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So the Open Loot's up a little bit. I mean, I think Big Time seemed to obviously got the game Big Time. That's been going for a while, and Open Loot was sort of the marketplace originally for the NFTs on that, and then they've brought in some new games. One of which is I quite like actually, called World Shards. So I think they are their own little community. They seem to be quite insular. You don't see a lot of crossovers with other blockchain projects, and obviously it's running on its own infrastructure, so it's a little bit of a closed box. I don't think there's any great excitement about the Open Loot token. You were supposed to get some sort of airdrop to you if you'd been using the marketplace before. I can't see. I thought I got some, but I can't see that I have got some now. But anyway, I mean, it would be a tiny amount, so I'm not bothered from that point of view. The Champs one is the Super Champs people who were originally doing a bunch of stuff on Flow, mobile games on Flow, sort of hyper casual games on Flow, and now sort of trying to build out these. They got a tennis game and a sort of a 2D side rolling shooter game. Again, it's going back to, I suppose, a little bit about games going on base, so that's sort of good from the base point of view. They are experienced as a sort of dev team. They've worked in mobile for quite a long time.
It used to be Joyride, didn't they?
Joyride's the company, and obviously now they do a foundation called Champs Foundation or whatever. How you launch a token. I think the tennis game is sort of probably the more interesting of the two. But I think it's the sort of anime cartoony sort of looks. Again, like all this sort of thing, it goes. The problem sort of is when you have a token, you want to. It just becomes very volatile, and the volatility generally is downwards. So it's very you sort of have to launch a token because at some point investors sort of want to sell out, and that's sort of in your roadmap is to release a token if you're a blockchain project. But it's I'm not quite sure that maybe they have other games. I should presume they have other games to launch. But at the moment, what they have, I think, is a bit lightweight for a token to do anything other than be tossed around by market sentiment.
Yeah. On a final note, Fableborne have launched their season 3 this week, I think yesterday, and with that they've also kind of unveiled their power token and some new reward systems for earning essence. You can earn like gold essence, bronze essence, and primordial essence, I think it is, which will eventually be possible to convert to that power token, which will be sort of an underlying token of their ecosystem. They have released a light paper as well, in which they state that there will be more games coming from, obviously, the developers, UK-based Primechain Games. So currently it's only Fableborne live, but they've also sort of teased some UGC in there, and then eventually some more games. And so this power token will sort of span across all of those. You've played that game as well. I mean, it's on a mobile kind of base builder action RPG.
Yes,
not Flash. Someone's called it quite a lot of genre.
Yeah, it's actually So basically, it's an action-based RPG. So you're in direct control of a character who's trying to fight his way through various sort of castle areas, and you sort of level them up, and then as you level up your sort of character who's the one you control, and then you can also level up sort of minion characters, and those are the ones you build out a base as well, and other people can sort of attack that base. So the idea is a bit of sort of dungeon keeper sort of point of view. It's sort of quite lightweight in the building side of it. You're just placing down sort of characters, and it's a sort of the level that you have of the characters that gives them the strength. There's not originally, when I first looked at the game, there was a bit more about sort of placement of traps and items. They seem to have taken that away, streamlined it, and made it in some ways more accessible, but in some ways less deep. It's very pick up and play. I'll sort of give it that. They also go for that sort of mass market thing. I guess at the moment I've not played it enough to know quite how deep it's gonna be as you get into sort of the mid and latter stages of the leveling up. And
one of the interesting things is because they migrated to Ronin recently. That's some of the rewards you can get if you get one of these. What do they call it? It's like, well, it's basically a battle pass for the season. Is that some of the rewards will be like Axie, NFTs, and vouchers, which you can redeem RON. So that's kind of an instant sort of integration there with the new RON. So that's nice.
As I've sort of said before, I think this type of game is something that Ronin doesn't have at the moment. So there is a sort of, I think, given that the Ronin audience is always looking for new stuff, I think they'll get people in there, and it's probably a bit more accessible than something like Ragnarok Monster World, which it's, to some degree has is a more Clash of Clans, but sort of playing in the same space. So this is more accessible and jump into. I guess. I don't know. Long-term metrics. I mean, they are from Primechain are a ex-mobile studio, so I think they've been talking about their retention mechanics as they've done different seasons, but they only ever went up to day 7, which is sort of pretty irrelevant. You want what's your D90 sort of thing, but we'll see.
Good. So on that note, we are going to finish off. But thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week. Bye. Have a good week.
Bye.